Okay, we're live.
Okay, so we are now calling the meeting of the Technical Coordinating Committee to order. It is January 21st, 2:32. Please watch this new video.
Bear with me just one moment.
You guys don't get to hear me say all this stuff anymore.
Oh, you got lucky this time.
Or they got lucky.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Great. That is nice. I'm sure you don't want to hear me say all that stuff. So anyway, next up is Christina. She's going to do a roll call for us. And what would be helpful, I think, is because I do see some new faces on the screen here, is if you, as you call your name, you can also just clarify what agency you're with. Take it away, Christina.
Okay, member Alman? No. Member Anderson? No. Member Ballinger?
I'm here. Thank you. I'm representing the City County Engineers, Heather Ballinger, City of Walnut Creek.
Member Bobadilla? No. Member Chen?
Here, I'm Jason Chen from City of Orinda, representing SWAT.
Member Conradi? I'm sorry, Cunningham? Member Conradi?
I'm here. Jim Conradi representing AC Transit.
Thank you. Member Diaz?
Here, representing Tri-Delta Transit, Augustine Diaz.
Thank you. Member Dillard?
Hi, everyone. Andy Dillard, Town of Danville, representing SWAT.
Thank you. Member Fay?
Here, Jerry Fay, Contra Costa County.
Member Kersovan?
Here, City of Brentwood.
Member Mercurio?
Jill Mercurio here with the City of San Pablo, representing Big Tech.
Thank you. Member Nelson? Member Ortiz? Member Parikh?
Hello, Abhishek here, City of Concord, representing Transpac.
Thank you. Member Reeves?
Here, representing County Connection.
Member Rawani? Member Singh? Member Smith?
Hi, Andy Smith with the City of Walnut Creek here representing Transpac.
Member Wang? Chair Wells or Vice Chair Wells?
Ricky Wells representing BART.
And Chair Greenblatt?
Leah Greenblatt from WCAC representing WCAC.
We do have a quorum. Do we have any?
Hi, Christina. Gaz Tizazu from Caltrans, filling in for Inderpreet Singh.
I'm sorry, who are you filling in for?
Inderpreet Singh.
Thank you.
Sorry, Christina, this is also Jamar Stamps from Contra Costa County filling in for John Cunningham.
Excellent, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then. Thanks, Christina. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Christina, have we received any public comment?
No, we have not received any public comment.
All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak during the public comment on the item that is not part of the agenda? If so, please raise your hand and I or staff will call upon you. You guys see any public comment?
I see no public comment.
Okay. All right, so then moving on, the next item on the agenda is approval of the summary of actions from August 20th, 2020. Are there any changes, comments, etc. from the committee? If anyone from the public would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Chair Greenblatt, I see maybe a typo. I think it's referencing me as the chair when it should be you.
Thank you. Any other comments, changes? Okay. So due to the size of the TCC, the motions, if you remember, all in one fell swoop via a roll call vote after the last regular agenda item has been presented. So we will note that when we get to that voting stage, that there was a correction to the minutes regarding who was chairing it. All right, so then next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any changes, comments, etc. from the committee? Or does anyone want to pull an item from the consent calendar? And I'm going to rely on the CCTA folks to let me know about hands and things because I can't really see that.
There are no hands raised.
Okay. So again, due to the size of the TCC, we will handle a motion and a roll call vote after the last regular agenda item has been presented. Okay, moving through this agenda. Next, we have approval of the work plan update to the congestion management plan for 2021. Matt Kelly will be presenting this item for us. Take it away, Matt.
Thanks, Leah. And thank you, committee members. Good to see everyone after several months of TCC hiatus. Back with some real exciting items for you, let me tell you. And there's some new members, so I'll give a little background on the congestion management program. So the CMP is a state legislated requirement congestion as a congestion management agency. We are required to prepare and update a CMP every 2 years. This, I believe, will be our 14th, if I'm not wrong. It's correct in the staff report. I'm trying to go from memory. Let's see, 15th. So just some background on the CMP. It was developed in 1991, and it was based on our existing Measure C growth management program. So folks around the state saw what we were doing with our growth management program, said, hey, a lot of the things that CCTA is doing is pretty cool. We'd like to do that statewide. And so legislation was passed in 91. And now all the congestion management agencies around the state are having to do this plan, which for us, we defer to our growth management program because we are doing all those requirements under the growth management program. So we mostly see the CMP as kind of a required exercise, but we take some of those requirements seriously because they are valuable, and one of those is the monitoring of the CMP network, which includes all of the freeways in the county as well as our major arterials. So every 2 years we do a level of service monitoring as part of the CMP, and you may wonder why you're still hearing about level of service when we've all been hearing about the state requiring VMT instead of level of service in CEQA. And that's because the state is still behind on their full conversion to VMT. They've moved forward with CEQA, but they haven't caught up with things like the CMP. So we still do the level of service reporting, but as you probably know, we try and capture more data than just the traffic data. Since 2011, we've been capturing bike and pedestrian counts at all the LOS intersections that we monitor. It's 65 intersections around the county. So it gives us a nice running history of bike ped data. And we always share those synchro LOS sheets with you because they're in your jurisdictions and you may need them for the traffic study, what have you. And we make those bike ped counts available to you as well. So that is one major requirement we take seriously. We also like to document the performance metrics that folks are using around the county, the transit agencies, different programs that CCTA is working on, like Innovate 680 establishes different program metrics. So we try and document all those because there's a performance of the system component to the CMP. There's also a capital improvement program, a 7-year capital improvement program, which if you've been around for a while, we update that every 2 years. So basically in the spring, we propose updating that again, reaching out to you all and having you update your existing projects that are in our project database, as well as adding any new projects. And we try and keep those as capital projects and not programs like, a sidewalk rehab program or a street paving program. We want them to be discrete capital projects. So in the spring, we'll be reaching out to you to update those, whether we do kind of an online database entry update or whether we send you spreadsheets to update. We're still kind of working through that, but we'll let you know. And so those are the things we want to really focus on for this CMP. Something else we are going to look at is the idea of opting out of the CMP process. So Sonoma County did it years ago. They've been fine. They still get all their gas tax funds from MTC. They still get any pass-through funds that we as CMAs think we have to be a CMA to receive. So we've been doing our research with MTC staff, as well as looking at what others have done Elsewhere, Los Angeles County through LA Metro just opted out of the CMP process. They shared with us how they went about it, and told us that they are not, failing to receive any funds after opting out of the CMP process, and they're still a congestion management agency. So we received a presentation from them. I'm chair of the Bay Area CMP working group. It's real exciting. Want to attend, I'll invite. We received a presentation from MTC and LA Metro staff on this. I think everyone was quite intrigued. For CCTA, it makes a little more sense, I think, because of what I explained earlier, that we already have this program that takes care of a lot of these requirements. So we are going to examine opting out of the CMP process and just make sure that we aren't losing anything as part of that. So that's one kind of extra task that we're putting on this CMP. But I think it makes some sense. And one thing I wanted to mention to you all is really the only thing we have to do to opt out is to get a resolution from a majority of our cities and a majority of the population. I'll have to tease out the details on that, but I think it's something along those lines. So if this were to happen, we would be coming to the cities and asking you to, we'd be providing you a template resolution for you to take to your councils. We don't think there would be any ramifications to the cities. As long as we're receiving our pass-through funds from MTC, you'll receive those as well, but we will make sure we look at all the pros and cons as we go through. But so what I'm here today to do is to get your consensus on our work plan, really just focusing on those core elements, including the monitoring. We are going to be taking our monitoring contract to the board next month to have them amend the current contract to keep Iteris on to do one more round of CMP monitoring. They've already done a lot of work to get all of our intersections, synchro files up to date, the signal timing plans up to date, all that good stuff. So we think it just makes sense to keep them on board for one more year as opposed to going out and finding a new consultant. As part of the monitoring, you can see in attachment A in your packet the list of intersections. They're in your communities. We will be needing from some of you encroachment permits. We're asking for a waiver on those if at all possible for the cities that require. And we're also asking for expedited approval of those encroachment permits if required. So it's the same traffic counting consultants that you've worked with in the past. And they will be reaching out to you again if you do require a permit. If you didn't require a permit in the past, but do in the last 2 years, please let me know. Otherwise, we know who requires permits. But otherwise, keep an eye out for those. And also, if you don't require a permit and you've got an intersection on the list, we will be in your community in the spring, March, May timeframe. So, we routinely get calls from the public wondering what someone is doing in their neighborhood with a camera or with a piece of paper or something like that. We just want you to be aware that our counters will be out there. There's nothing in the roadway. There are no tube counters, anything like that. This is strictly monitoring intersections, and it's generally done by video. And actually this time around, we're going to see how much we can do using big data. So that's another nuance of this effort. We use big data for the freeway component. We're going to see what we can use for the intersection LOS. But chances are we will have to do some monitoring. So if you have any concerns, please let me know. That's our proposal for the CMP work plan. We will have a draft in June, and then starting in July, it will go out for your review and comment. And then it comes back and we incorporate comments and we go for an adoption in December. And that's my proposed work plan on the CMP. I can take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Hey, Leah, this is Steve Kursovan. I have one question / concern.
Go for it.
You're going to do turning movement counts at an intersection with school out of session more than likely, which I'm guessing is going to make all of these intersections look fantastic. Have we accounted for that?
Well, you know, because this is the CMP and not the MTSOs, we didn't want to do the MTSO monitoring because normally we would be doing the MTSO monitoring parallel with the CMP. But because of what you just mentioned, Steve, it doesn't make sense to do the MTSOs because you're really held to a standard with those, and if things grow from there, then there's a potential penalty, and we think things are going to grow from here. So the CMP, we're really just doing it to really. Oh, and I forgot to mention one thing. We're really just doing it to monitor our growth over time and take a look at what COVID has, how it has impacted the system. We also want to know where COVID hasn't impacted the system and where we're still seeing large volumes and congestion during COVID. So we do think it makes some sense, but yes, we will not be making any decisions based on this data. It's going to be noted as an off year. But what I did want to note is one task we've added on to our Iteris, our consultant for the monitoring process, is to create an online dashboard that will be set up to basically monitor the system full time using big data. So it'll be something you can tap into. You can look at history. It'll be like a real-time traffic map, but we'll be doing it all the time and be able to archive all that data, and we're going to add different queries to it. So we hope it'll be something that people can use going forward. So we know it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it now, but it's required as part of the CMP. So we thought we'd get whatever added value we can out of it. But good question, Steve.
Any other questions from committee members? I've got a couple. So for the freeway portion of the monitoring, will the counts be able to recognize the number of trucks, and will it also provide a separate count for the HOV lanes?
You're not going to like my answers, Leah. No and no right now, but I'm going to work with our consultants and we'll try and pull as much out of the freeway data as possible. It is this big data set. So there may be some tracking of trucks in there, but it's not a full, because the monitoring we do is based on speed and not census. It's hard to pick out, the type and number of vehicles. We're mostly just getting speeds. So, but if we can get with this big data, this INRIX data set, they're constantly able to pull more details out. So if we can get that detail out, I'm going to have them report as much freeway data as they can.
Okay, and then I have a few questions. So for the section in 580, I just kind of found out that it's not fully covered by when the Caltrans does their census for ADT, and I'm wondering if we're gonna get the proper counts for that section.
Well, like I said, we aren't counting. So we're looking at speed based on actual people's devices in their cars moving. So there's no way to get counts from that. I know the issue you're talking about. I know it was related to trucks at one point, truck census, but was it for overall ADT as well? Did you?
No, I was able to find the regular one.
Yeah, and I guess we'd have to figure out how they're getting their counts on trucks and why they can get, regular counts but not truck counts. But it does seem like a big gap in their coverage. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get that during this.
My last question had to do with the list of intersections in the packet on page 55. There's a list of all the intersections, and it doesn't include Richmond Parkway. But I looked in the back, and Richmond Parkway is one of the routes, but there's no intersection monitoring, or there's not an intersection ID number for any part of the parkway.
Yeah, generally anytime two routes that are part of the CMP network intersect, we would collect that data. I thought where it crossed San Pablo, there was.
But wouldn't you collect it on the parkway itself because it's part of the CMP network?
Well, we only collect intersections. But yes, I can go and look at our list of official list of CMP intersections and verify whether that is monitoring that.
Do any other members of the committee have questions? How about any members of the public?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, great, thanks. So there's an action for this item. They want to seek approval of the approach, scope, and schedule. It doesn't sound like there's any objections. So due to the size of the TCC, we're going to handle the motion and the roll call vote after the last regular agenda item has been presented. All right, moving on. The next item on the agenda is the review of updates to the Measure J Growth Management Program Implementation Guide. And Matt gets to talk to us about that.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find my CMP network map. I'll get back to you on that, Leah. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I do apologize to the folks who have seen this presentation over the last week or two. We've been going around to the RTPCs, and so I know at least some of you have had to witness it. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is our proposed revisions to the Growth Management Program Implementation Guide. For those of you who are new to TCC or Contra Costa or Measure J in general, one of the major components of Measure J is the Growth Management Program. It's I talked about it a little in our last item, but it basically has several requirements that seek to limit or manage growth in Contra Costa around our existing infrastructure within our existing footprint. There are several requirements that jurisdictions must be in compliance with in order to receive their return to source funds, which is 18% of the measure annual tax revenues, are divided up amongst the 19 cities and county, and through the mechanism of the GMP checklist, which you fill out and submit every 2 years. By doing that, you're saying or demonstrating you're in compliance with the 12 requirements of the GMP, and that's how you get your return to source funding. So there's several requirements, including each jurisdiction must maintain an urban limit line. So the guide documents all these policies and how they are implemented locally and how you would remain in compliance with them. So as I mentioned, urban limit line, there's your action plan updates, and that is heavily addressed in the revisions I'm going to go through today. There's, also how you're evaluating land use developments, traffic impact studies, how you're spending your return to source funds, things like that. So it's all spelled out in the implementation guide. So as you also may know, you have a TCC has a subcommittee called the Growth Management Program Task Force, and that group started convening in October of 2019 to help usher in and implement or incorporate VMT and the changes from Senate Bill 743 into the Growth Management Program. So the first thing that group did was develop a new policy related to VMT, because the Growth Management Program has always required level of service, just like in the CMP. But we decided through our planning directors and board members discussions with them, we decided to update the GMP to include VMT. So in July, as you may know, the board adopted our new VMT policy in the GMP with new thresholds and things like that related to how you analyze land use developments, how you mitigate them. One of the, when the board approved that, they also directed us to then update the Growth Management Program implementation documents, which includes the implementation guide, which is more policy level, and the technical procedures, which is more technical. It spells out how local staff or their consultants would actually prepare a traffic study, how you would go about doing a general plan amendment consistent with the GMP. So that's where we're at today. The last several meetings of the GMP task force have focused on updating the GMP implementation guide. So I'm just going to walk you through what's come out of those meetings and where we're at. That we do have a draft implementation guide out there for you to review, and I'll just walk you through kind of the major revisions that we're proposing. So as I mentioned, the updates originate back to those planning directors seminars that we held in 2018 and 2019 that a lot of you attended, as well as I mentioned the GMP task force input. And thank you to those of you who participated in any one of those venues. We feel like we've reflected your comments in these revisions. So we're hoping you're finding them to be consistent with the comments we've heard, but you can always let us know if they're not. So the decision was made to look at additional topics for in the implementation guide and really focusing on the action plan. So in the action plans, we've always just focused on regional roadways, but we've always allowed you to expand beyond that to other modes. But until recently, it did focus on roadways. We did have the La Miranda sub-area, which adopted BART as a route of regional significance. We also had the TVTC subregion, who has the Iron Horse Trail as a route of regional significance. So those areas have gotten a head start on this, but for this update, we looked at additional topics beyond roadways. We looked at more than what you're seeing here, but the task force kind of whittled it down to these 6 topic areas. So that includes the regional roadways that we've always included. It would expand to the regional bicycle and pedestrian network. It would also expand to the regional transit network. That would be assumed to include BART and other rail like Capital Corridor, but also our ferry stations and major bus service lines. We're thinking 15-minute bus lines, but that is, you know, at the discretion of the RTPCs. The action plans would also include these other 3 new topics, and these are kind of overarching topics of safety, equity, and climate change. And I'll get into the nuances there in just a second. So each action plan, and as you know, there's 5 action plans around the county. The TVTC one the SWAT area is the unique area in that they've got La Miranda action plan and a TVTC action plan. The TVT action plan includes the 3 Alameda County jurisdictions down there, as well as unincorporated Alameda County. So each action plan could add additional topics, but they would be required to, at minimum, include these 6 topics. But under that umbrella, each RTPC would have the discretion to establish their own metrics, goals, and actions related to each of those facilities, the 3 facilities, types of facilities, I should say. And we are proposing that our MTSOs, which were multimodal transportation service objectives, our performance metrics in the action plans, would be rebranded as regional transportation objectives, because they're no longer all focused on transportation. We've got these 3 new topics: safety, equity, and climate change. And then they're no longer focusing on service, like level of service. They'll be more multimodal measures. They could still include service, but they're moving beyond that as well. So we thought renaming them was appropriate. So we'll get into a little more detail on those modal topics. So as I mentioned, the 3 main categories there. So each, so just want to make it clear, the changes we're making to implement the implementation guide wouldn't change how the action plans work in terms of you know, the modes. It would continue to work the same way it does today for the roadways of regional significance. So each RTPC would designate routes, including roadway routes, active transportation routes, and transit routes in their part of the county. Now, the goal is to have countywide networks. So the goal is to have those facilities that cross RTPC lines, to have unified visions for those. And those CCTA would facilitate cross RTPC discussions. So if BART runs from Transplan to Transpac to La Miranda, we'd want some, you know, consistencies along there. There could be some, you know, some differences, or, you know, each RTPC could have multiple goals for BART, but we'd want to include a consistent goal for BART through the entire county, at least for a particular line. So those would be things that would be discussed and facilitated through the RTPC process. And then you would also set goals, those new RTOs, and ways to measure each RTO. They need to be measurable. We can't have a RTO that's not measurable, so it needs to be quantifiable somehow. And then supportive actions for each facility. And actions are really projects to try and maintain, you know, those facilities, whatever goals are set for those facilities. So when a jurisdiction, or when a development comes in to an upstream jurisdiction, that the impacts from that development aren't adversely affecting those goals. And so we have the measurement methods to quantify it and the actions to mitigate it. that's really kind of how it works in a nutshell. Then these new non-modal topics, equity, safety, and climate change. Those wouldn't be like the RTOs. They wouldn't apply to an individual facility. We're not going to look at, Mount Diablo Boulevard or, Brentwood Boulevard and say, Brentwood Boulevard needs to, change climate in transplant. We're going to look at the entire RTPC for these three goals. So in terms of equity, in terms of safety, in terms of climate change, what are the action plans doing in general at the RTPC level, not to each individual facility? You can certainly have goals and actions related and measures related to these for each individual facility if you felt it appropriate. But what we're talking about here is looking at the RTPCs in terms of these new topics. And then those would feed up to the countywide level when we're doing the countywide plan, because all the action plans feed up to the countywide. So then some changes to Chapter 3, the action plan actual process. We've updated the actual flow chart because we think the old flow chart in the current guide didn't reflect the language as well as it could have. So we've tried to interpret it better in the graphics. And it talks about that new kind of consultation process where you've got shared facilities across RTPC lines, and it's expanded the discussion of RTOs and especially those new non-roadway RTOs. So Chapter 4, it looks at the impact evaluation process from land use projects. It talks about how you would evaluate those projects under the GMP and based on the location, based on the type of project. So it really just spells out when and where you would need to be doing these the VMT analysis on new developments. And it also codifies or just makes it clear that level of service is still a topic or a measure that can be in the action plans. It's not a topic in CEQA, but it still can be in the action plans, but not to replace VMT, but in addition to VMT. And then we expanded the discussion of impacts to not just the roadways, but to the bike and ped and transit facilities. And then we made other kind of just minor changes to most of the other chapters. Chapter 7 was updated. We really wanted to make it clear that that VMT is now, it's now part of CEQA, it's now part of the GMP, but the metrics you come up with in your action plans are not necessarily part of the CEQA process, they're part of the GMP process. They can carry over, but it's not presumed that they carry over from your action plans to the CEQA process. And yeah, here's some of those bullets I just mentioned. Level of service can still be part of your action plans, but not part of the CEQA process. And as I just mentioned on the last slide, those 6 action plan topics, while part of the GMP guidance, they're not presumed to be part of your CEQA metrics that you put forward in your secret documents. That's something you can select on a project by project basis as the lead agency in CEQA. And then kind of the most important bullet, you're still subject to the GMP and the action plans as part of the GMP, receiving your 18% return to source funds and access to other CCTA programs, including TLC. So that's what our major revisions are. What we're planning to do from here is to take this around to the RTPCs. We got in a few TACs already this month. We'll be going to the boards next month. And then we'll be bringing this back to the authority with any comments we get from the RTPCs and TCC members for approval by the PC and board. And then throughout the next several months, we'll be updating the technical procedures and a few items in the implementation guide. And that also includes our detailed VMT guidance that you've seen some of that. We'll start publishing the VMT maps and finalize the VMT methodology and all of that. And then we'll be working on the VMT mitigation program that we received a grant from Caltrans to study and develop. And we'll be asking GMP task force members to participate on that. And that will be exciting because that is a countywide program to help mitigate VMT increases by providing a mechanism for mitigating them with VMT reducing projects. So that's something we'll be working on over the next couple of years. And then we'll be updating the action plans starting later this year. As I mentioned, each RTPC and 2 in SWAT are going to be updated, and CCTA will be providing consultant support on that as we have in the past, especially with these new topics we'll be discussing as part of the action plans. The consultant support will be very helpful in helping everyone kind of figure out the new measures we're trying to promote here. So that is my presentation on the implementation guide. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Matt, can you clarify something for me? Where do the TCC comments fit into this process? And the recommended action is to provide comment and forward the guide for approval to the board. But we haven't really heard what the other review bodies are commenting on yet.
I mean, if TCC wants to weigh in on all the comments from the RTPCs, then we can bring it back here. That will extend everything a month. What we thought is the GMP task force is the body that you guys appointed to do this work. So we wanted to take the changes to them. Okay. So, I mean, it's at your discretion. We can bring it back, but that just kind of extends things out another month. We thought we'd bring it to you in parallel with the RTPCs and then bring all those comments back, make sure the task force was comfortable, and then bring it to the PC board. So far, we're not hearing any comments we think are any different than what the task force has heard, but we certainly haven't heard all the comments. So, like I said, it's at your discretion if you want this to come back, but we aren't expecting any comments that would cause us to shift directions, but we never know. So
okay, well, people as they make their comments and questions today can clarify if they think that there's something.
Yeah, definitely.
worthy, but
And comments from the TCC, from TCC members, you can give them straight to us today. You can submit them online. You can submit them through your RTPC on behalf of your city. It's really up to you. The GMP touches lots of different areas.
okay. So are there comments or questions from the committee members?
Ricky, I have a question.
Great, go for it.
So I see in the winter and spring, there are plans to develop a TAC. What do you expect the composition to look like?
So we really, we've identified the GMP task force as kind of a starting point for that. And that, as I mentioned, is a subcommittee of this, and it contains mostly local agency staff, but most of the transit agencies are represented there. I believe Kamala is our representative on the GMP task force, but we also want to expand it beyond just local agency staff to include folks like Transform. They actually were a big supporter of this VMT mitigation program when we started talking about it during the TEP and over the last couple of years, as well as people like the BIA, the Building Industry Association, because they would be, someone dealing with the ramifications as developers. So yeah, we want it to mostly be local agency staff, both the lead agencies and the folks that would be implementing some of these VMT reducing projects, but also some advocacy or kind of industry folks.
Great, thank you. That definitely answered my question, because I did have some concerns about what the impact would be on TOD.
Yes, definitely. And we'll reach out to the transit providers that are part of the task force, and if they aren't all represented or we don't have takers, we'll reach out to the agencies themselves.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the committee?
I'm not seeing any.
All right, I've got a few. And I'm not sure, Matt, how, I'd be how you want to handle my comments. I've got like 4 or 5, but some of them are, I think, worthy of discussion at the TCC level. I'm looking at page 84 of the packet, or it's page 18 of the document, and it's section 2.4. They're talking about transportation safety, and it says, a key component of transportation safety is vehicle technology. And I think it's great that we're finally having the potential to have these, gosh, I can't even remember, is it RTOs now? Whatever it is, about safety, but I feel like the tone is not putting sufficient responsibility where it might be due. And, I'd like to see drivers mentioned. I'd like to see speed mentioned. In fact, it uses the term efficient, which kind of, in my mind, suggests like speeding those speeds up, but that can be very counter to, in some locations, to speed as a safety concern. So,
can you remind me what page we're on again? I'm trying to.
Oh, sorry. So it's page 84 of our agenda packet, or page 18 of the document, and section 2.4.
I'm with you.
It sentence that says a key component is vehicle technology. And, you know, not everything is solved by vehicles, and a big driver of safety is the driver themselves and their behavior. And I see that there's a linkage there, but you know,
I totally agree. I totally agree. Those are the types of comments we're looking for, the details. We think we've got the kind of concepts good. So any detail that you can help us flesh out, and perhaps we can have, you know, Colin Clark, since he's working on the Vision Zero stuff, have him take a look at the language and make sure it is consistent with what we're putting out there for Vision Zero.
Yeah.
So yeah, before you get to the other ones, would you be willing to submit written comments just so we don't
sure
lose track of them? I'm going to try and keep notes.
Okay. Then my next comments apply to two sections, starting on page 87. It's section 2.5, and it's the section on climate change. And then I can't quite read my notes. There's another section on equity. And the examples that are provided there aren't very clear. It just says, you know, support comments. Well, let's see, that is support its support its community, sorry. And it says that in the transportation equity section too. And I just think that we can provide better examples and even include, you know, what the CCTA's role would be. This might be controversial when it comes to the equity, maybe even climate change, but you know, some examples could be about dedicating funding or staffing, or ways to implement the CTPBs that were just adopted. I just think that they're so generic, the existing examples, that they're not very meaningful.
So Leah, I know it's going to be in a different section, but we are planning on putting examples of the new RTOs. I think what we've got in there right now is just existing RTOs. Yeah, but we can certainly expand upon that if it doesn't seem to be enough, you know, appropriate example types of projects. We can certainly add to it. Are you talking about table 2?
Pardon?
Are you talking about table 2 in that section?
No, it was in the text section, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, a little further down, there are some examples. Page 91, 25 of the document.
Okay. Then on page 90 or page 24 of the document, in section 3.1, we're under action plan components, and there's a number 3, and the right edge of at least my document starts to get cut off, and I wasn't able to follow the meaning of the 3rd and 4th line from the bottom that's cut off.
Right.
And I don't know if you can see that now, but you know, it's talking about communities of concern and transit. And
yeah, so this is a PDF. Yeah, it looks like the bubbles got too wide on that page.
Yeah.
I
So do
know.
you know, like, I guess my takeaway or my key point here is I want to make sure that transit metrics just aren't applying to communities of concern.
Don't think that's the intent, but yeah, we can make sure. Yeah, it's definitely not the intent. I think it's going to be a focus because I think this is the equity section. Is this the equity section? Anyway, comment noted. And if folks want, I
And
can
then
send out a Word version that people can look at. Yeah, I think I sent one to John for the TAC, the WCTAC TAC, but you should be able to see the full text in there.
And then let's see, page 96 or page 30, where it's talking about additional information and data collection. And, you know, it talks about it kind of this, I think that data, it should include here safety data. And there is this reference back to Appendix E that says, you know, multimodal safety issues should be addressed, but I think we should be more specific about the type of safety data that could be looked at, you know, speed and collision and I don't know what else, but
yeah, no, totally agree. And that's, I think, got something else we can check in with the Vision Zero stuff we're working on and make sure it's all consistent.
And my last comment is more of a question for you. And I don't have good notes on this, but on page 98 or page 32, there's number 3, and there's a big paragraph that's been deleted. And I'm wondering why the paragraph was deleted. And if you could give us an explanation for that.
I believe it originally said conflicts. Wish I had the Word version open. I believe it was all before the conflicts were only pertaining to TMPs. And so I think it just expanded that statement to reflect, you know, existing programs, no matter what they are. I'm trying to read the comment. So I can understand what's going on here, but I think there's I don't think it affects anything, but if you think it does, let me know. Yeah, we didn't wholesale take out any major components. I think this actually expands, just makes it less specific and more, it shouldn't conflict with any state, regional, or federal programs that we already have to comply with. But we'll certainly be willing to examine that if you think it's not appropriate.
Are there any other comments or questions from committee members? You guys weren't all reading it with a fine-tooth comb? Okay. Let's see. How about any one from the public? Anybody'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. So I guess for me, I feel like, you know, as long as the comments have been addressed, I'd be okay with, you know, forwarding the motion, but, you know, because I think it's good that the growth management committee is going to look at this more. So, due to the size of the TCC, we will handle a motion and roll call vote after the last regular agenda item has been presented with, and if I can amend that to say with our comments addressed at our subcommittee. So I'm seeing some nodding. All right. So now to the exciting part of the meeting where we get to do a big giant motion and roll call vote to approve the following items. Item 3A, approval of the summary of actions from August 20th, 2020 as corrected. Item 4, approval of the consent calendar. Item 5A, approval of the work plan to update the congestion management plan for 2021. And item 5B, approval to forward the draft GMP implementation guide with our comments going to our subcommittee and giving authority to the authority board for adoption. So do I have a motion and a second?
Steve Kirsten will move.
Great, thanks, Steve. And do I have a second?
I'll second, Andy Smith.
Great, thank you very much. And Christina, please conduct our roll call vote.
Okay, Committee Member Ballinger.
Aye.
Committee Member Chen.
Aye.
Committee Member Alternate Stamps. Did he leave? Oh, he's there. He hasn't said anything. I'll come back. Committee Member Conradi. Nothing. Committee Member Diaz.
Aye.
Committee Member Dillard.
Aye.
Committee Member Fay.
Aye.
Committee Member Kersavan.
Yes.
Committee Member Mercurio.
Aye.
Committee Member Ortiz.
Aye.
Committee Member Parikh.
Aye.
Committee Member Reeves.
Aye.
Committee Member Smith.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wells.
Yes.
Chair Greenblatt.
Yes.
And I'm going to try Member Alternate Stamps again. And Member Conradi.
It looks like Jamar was trying to turn off his microphone, or was that you, Christina?
I didn't touch it.
Jamar, are you there?
You there?
We still have a quorum?
We do. So the motion passes a majority with the committee members voting yes. Do you want me to name off the absence and the, I guess I could, with Member Almond being absent, Member Anderson being absent, Member Bobadilla being absent, Member Conradi being absent, Member Cunningham being absent, Member Nelson being absent, Member Rawani being absent, Member Singh being absent, and Member Wong being absent.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is there any other business or announcements from our committee members? All right, seeing none, we'll adjourn this meeting at 3:44 to our meeting on February 18th at 2:30. Thank you all. And
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.
Bye.